When I was growing up, I had a favorite uncle. His name was Uncle Roy. He lived in Washington, D.C., where my dad had grown up with him. And we would go visit him at least once or twice a year. And I'll never forget, every time I walked into his house, he always had something special waiting for me. In fact, it was these $50 that he collected. I think he must have had thousands of them in his basement, and he kept them in tennis cans, Wilson tennis cans. And so when I would come to visit, always waiting for me would be some of those coins in my own Wilson tennis can. And I loved how they sounded when I jangled them, and I could even feel the weight of those coins in that tennis can. My uncle had this amazing ability to do something small that made me feel special. And ironically, even when I got older and got married, well, Bill and I really didn't have much money starting out, and my Uncle Roy knew how much I loved going up to the specialty coffee shop in town. And so every month he would send me a check just for me, $100, and he called it my coffee money. I loved how that made me feel. It was a moment that I'll never forget. And speaking of moments, I love the idea of the power of moments that Chip and Dan Heath talk about in their book. Because what they suggest in this book is that we can create those kinds of powerful, meaningful, resonant moments all throughout our lives, and that we don't spend enough time making people feel good, going the extra mile, doing something special. And whether you're a leader, a teacher, a parent, we can all benefit by trying to incorporate more moments into our lives. Now, coming from a educational background myself, both my parents were teachers, there's a very special part of this book in which they highlight a elementary school in Washington, D.C., and it was actually considered one of the worst schools in the country. So bad, in fact, that they had to do a total overhaul. They got a new administration, including a new principal. And when the principal came in, she looked around. She was like, oh my gosh, there were cinder blocks. It was dirty. And she ended up hiring a new staff. And when that summer, getting ready for the kids to come in, they washed it and they painted it and it looked fresh and new. But into the school year, they realized that that really didn't make a difference. Kids were still leaving class. Parents seemed to not trust the teachers or disinterested. And so they consulted with a company who specialized in, I guess, what you would call moments. And what they suggested was that the teachers go and make home visits the summer before the school year started. Initially, the parents were skeptical, even the teachers were skeptical. But what they found is that when those teachers arrived at a parent's home with no papers to sign, with nothing but just their bodies there to really sit down and talk with the parents, that interaction changed things profoundly. Because for the first time, parents felt that they were being listened to, and teachers felt that they were making a connection with the parents. And the long and the short of it was, the parent-teacher night that usually attracted 25 parents, after those home visits, more than 200 parents came. Test scores went up, and it changed the entire feel of that school. That's the power of moments. And that's what this book gets at, that we can do more of those kinds of things in our lives when we're trying to interact with somebody and when we are at work, wherever we are. It's a wonderful book. It's definitely something that you can check out, and I know that whatever you do in life, you'll benefit from it. So Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, and I'll be back next time with another book, maybe something a little lighter and fictional. Thanks for being with me today. See you next time.